Rama Rama shalakaya chakshurumilitam yena tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Uta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sagana Ragunatam Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Paridana Saitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Pada Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhan Vitamsha Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Krishnapanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhu Bhaivacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namine. Namaste Saraswate Deve Gaudavani Pracharine Nirvishesha Sunyavadi Paschata Deshatarine. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadara Shri Vasani Gaura Bhaktivedanta. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Nice to be back
Welcome back.
with all of you. Hopefully everybody had a nice break.
We were waiting for you, Prabhu.
Yep, I agree.
That is my great fortune. So, we'll continue discussing the second chapter. Actually, we'll be moving forward now to answering Arjuna's fourth question, which is, when one is restrained his senses, having understood the real purpose of life, what does such a person do? Sometimes when we begin to make progress in our spiritual life, our Krishna consciousness, our activities and taste begin to change. And sometimes our associates from prior eras of our life begin to wonder, what is it that you do? You don't party anymore, you don't watch this, you don't do this, what do you do all day? You must be miserable. So, at least if innocently asked, it's a fair question, right? So, when one is engaged in a bodily enjoyment, we all know what those activities are. Those are so prevalent to us. Just go to the mall and you'll see all you need to know. But when we think, how does one act in engagement of the spirit soul in service to Krishna? How does one behave? Right? What does one do? So Arjuna is asking this question. If I am going to pursue this path of stitya prajna, transcendental consciousness, I'm going to give up all my material desires, I better at least know, what does one do in such state of consciousness? So that's the fourth question that Arjuna has asked, and will be answered today. So as we've been doing the last many weeks, What is the key theme of this whole section?
Control your senses.
Control the senses. And controlling the senses does not mean stopping the senses. Right? Because stopping the senses does not work. Stopping the senses from seeing nice things, hearing nice things, eating nice things, that is going to happen. So the question of Krishna consciousness that Krishna is explaining to us is not to stop the senses, but to direct the senses in a productive manner. One that brings good to one. Right? Just like the horses, if they are engaged properly, they can be a great resource in moving that chariot forward. But if they are not engaged properly, controlled, they are running wild, then the chariot's destination will also have a very precarious end. So that is the point here. And Krishna has been guiding us to this vision that we're trying to have. That when we see all aspects of our life, all of our relationships, all of our sources of happiness and distress, all of the things we encounter in life, if we look at it through the perspective, I am spirit soul, I am not this body, we'll find the strength and intelligence to overcome those situations, to handle those situations in a very nice way. Right? So, that is what Krishna said. So, in the prior 2 weeks, we've been discussing this link from sense objects. We said, what's the harm if I attach to the sense objects? Krishna said, this stitya prajna is one who is fully detached from all material senses. So we may ask then, well, what's the harm? What's the problem with attaching to the senses? So Krishna began to explain, well, when you do attach to the senses, then what happens is lust develops. And what is lust?
Intense desire.
Intense desire. This absolute intense desire. It's very appropriate now. I always use the example. When do we see intense desire for many things? Black Friday. What? People will stand outside in the rain, snow, hours and hours and hours to satisfy intense desires. It is lust. Right? People will fight in the stores, elbows come out to get that TV or whatever it may be. It is lust. But what happens to lust? What is the result of lust? Krishna says, anger. Why?
Lust is never going to satisfy.
Those desires we have
Temporary.
will never be satisfied. If I am hungry, I have the desire to eat, and you give me water, will I be happy? You might give me nice water in a golden cup, the perfect temperature. Maybe you'll put a little bit of lime in the water. Maybe a fancy twirly straw. Doesn't matter. Because my need is not being satisfied by the means of water. It will not work. And what will be my condition? Frustration. And when we are frustrated, we are happy? So lust always results in anger. Because those desires ultimately become, maybe they are temporarily satisfied, momentarily satisfied, but just moments later, again, we are unsatisfied. And so from anger comes delusion. How many good decisions we have made when we're angry? How many of us, after coming off from our mood of anger, said, I wish? Any of us? It means we were delusioned. We were not thinking clearly. Overcome by our anger, right? It happens. And from delusion becomes this bewilderment. I lose all sense. And ultimately, my intelligence is lost. My ability to discern right from wrong is lost. And from that, Krishna says, one then falls down. Falls down, what do you mean? I trip and fall? No. It means that I have achieved this human form of life. But if I don't have intelligence about how to use this human form of life, I risk falling down again to the lower species of life. Because trying to satisfy my lust, my desire for the sense objects, having lost my intelligence, I'll do whatever it takes. Whatever it means, right? That is the sequence Krishna had told us. So the senses must be engaged, and we have two choices to engage the senses. Just two? Just two. Either we can associate the senses with material desires, money and wine and women and men, that, or we can associate our senses with Krishna. We have two choices. There is no other choice. And how are we going to decide which direction to go? How are we going to decide?
The one which gives them more happiness.
The one that's going to give us more happiness. Right? The one that's better for us. That's it. If going left to Krishna is going to give us less satisfaction, what will happen after some time?
We're going to take right.
We'll go right back. Right? That's it. So, we know, Krishna has been telling us that the only means to happiness is understanding you are a spirit soul. You are not this body. And because I am not this body, I cannot get real happiness from this body. It's not who I am. Just as much as I cannot get real happiness from my car, I can get happiness from me as a driver. Just as you cannot get real ultimate happiness from you're not going to get real happiness from your body. And because I am spirit soul gets happiness from spirit, the supreme spirit. Trying to get happiness from matter is like mixing oil and water. It doesn't mix. It doesn't work. No matter how much we try. So, Krishna says in the 64th verse, just prior, 2 verses prior to what we'll read today, he says, Krishna says, a person free from all attachment and aversion and able to control his senses through regular principles of freedom can obtain the complete mercy of the Lord. Anybody wants to obtain the complete mercy of the Lord?
I guess everyone.
Everyone. Right? Because the mercy of the Lord is our path to perfection of life. And it requires free from all attachment and aversion. Aversion means a devotee does not hate anything, nor do they become attached to anything. They see everything only in relation to Krishna. So when a devotee sees that someone is not following Krishna consciousness, they do not become hateful or resentful of that person. They become compassionate. When whatever they see in the material world, they think, oh, how I can use it in the service of Krishna. So aversion, hatred is also a bad emotion for trying to control our senses. So controlling them through the regulative principles of freedom. Okay? This is the practice of Krishna consciousness. There are principles that we practice that help us regulate the senses. So then Krishna says a very powerful verse. For one thus satisfied in Krishna consciousness, the threefold miseries of material existence exist no longer. In such satisfied consciousness, one intelligence is soon well established. The threefold miseries Krishna is speaking about here, adhyatmik, adhibhautik, adi devik. These are the difficulties of the mind and body, the difficulties between different living entities, between, boss and us, neighbor, mother-in-law, dog, all these things. They happen. Not my mother-in-law, of course. But this, and then the natural disasters, the weather, it is snowing outside, our attendance is limited, it's cold, it's rainy. They give disturbances to our plans. But to one who has become to Krishna consciousness, those miseries, what happens to them? They exist no longer. So does that mean if we become a devotee, it won't snow anymore?
They don't affect it.
They don't affect it. Why don't they affect the devotee? One in Krishna consciousness.
One thing is the material. It's not going to last forever.
Yeah. The Krishna conscious is conscious. I am spirit soul. These disturbances are affecting my body. Let them come and go as the seasons pass, as the seasons come and go. They don't affect my relationship with Krishna. So they don't become disturbed. Their consciousness has elevated, has transcended. Remember that boat in the ocean? When the ocean is going to and fro, the boat in that ocean is also being thrown to and fro. But if you just lift that boat a little bit out of the water, what happens? It doesn't move. But the ocean is still churning. Similarly, our consciousness, when we elevate, transcend our consciousness to I am spirit soul, all these things, these ups and downs in the material world, they're still going to happen. But they don't affect our consciousness, our happiness. Because our happiness is coming from a higher place. Our relationship with Krishna. And in such satisfied consciousness, one's intelligence is soon well established. We have to have some intelligence to know how to find this situation. This is the means to happiness. This is the means to becoming satisfied. It's the only means. The CDC today published a study that the life expectancy is now declining. For the first time since World War I. Now we may wonder, all the advancement in medicines, all the advancements in growing foods, in the information we have, I can take my temperature, I can pick my finger at home and tell me my blood sugar, I have blood. How is life expectancy going down? In Srimad Bhagavatam it explains, as Kali Yuga progresses, the life duration will decline. But man is convinced as time goes on, we're going to find out how to solve all the diseases. But this study was just published. And why the life expectancy is decreased? Because they attribute two major factors. One, there is a significant increase in death from drug overdoses. And second, a 30+% increase in suicides. So all the material advancement, are we happier? Are we more peaceful? Do we have a controlled mind? Why? Because the only means to become satisfied is Krishna consciousness. It's the only means. And without it, we will be bewildered and frustrated and turn to so many activities, including death inflicted upon ourselves voluntarily, very sadly. It's a sad epidemic. And what can we do to help? Restrict the flow of opioids? It's not going to help. We can increase the flow of Bhagavad Gitas. We can share this knowledge of how to find real happiness. That's it. So let's read this 66th verse. Someone wants to read the verse today? In purport.
One who is not connected with the Supreme in Krishna consciousness can have neither transcendental intelligence nor a steady mind, without which there is no possibility of peace, and how can there be any happiness without peace? Good question. Question mark. Purport. Unless one is in the Krishna consciousness, there is no possibility of peace. So it is confirmed in the 5th chapter 5.29 that when one understands that Krishna is the only enjoyer of all the good results of sacrifice and penance, that he is proprietor of all universal manifestation, and that he is real friend of all living entities, then only can one have real peace. Therefore, if one is not in the Krishna consciousness, there cannot be a final goal for the mind. Disturbance is due to mind of ultimate goal, and when enjoyer, proprietor, and friend of everyone and everything, then one can, with a steady mind, bring about peace. Therefore, one who is engaged without relationship with Krishna is certainly always in distress and is without peace. However, much he may make a show of peace and a spiritual advancement in life, Krishna consciousness is a self-manifested peaceful condition which can be achieved only in relationship with Krishna.
Now, Krishna speaks only the absolute truth. Absolute means it's always true. In all circumstances, in all situations, in all times, in all eras, absolutely. It is the only truth. So he has said in the prior verse, one satisfied in Krishna consciousness, the threefold miseries of material existence exist no longer. In such satisfied consciousness, one intelligence is soon well established. So he said, for one who is in Krishna consciousness, they have lost the effect of the threefold miseries. But the question may arise in our foolish mind is, okay, in Krishna consciousness, the threefold, one finds happiness. But then we may ask or wonder, well, okay, that's one area, there must be some other areas also. So Krishna closes that loop in this very powerful verse, where he says, one who is not connected to Krishna Can they ever have happiness? It's a startling statement. Because he is given to complete both sides of it. Any good instruction, we say to a child, don't eat dirt. Is that complete in its instruction? Because we haven't said what to eat. If I tell the child, you eat this nice rice dal, sabji, is that complete? Because I haven't told what not to eat. I have to tell both. Right? Don't eat this and eat this. Then it's completely clear. No? So here Krishna is telling us, you'll find happiness in Krishna consciousness, and you'll find it nowhere else. You'll find it nowhere else. So let's break down the thing. This verse is very... So, based on this verse, what does one need to be happy?
Meant to be peaceful.
Meant to be peaceful. Right? We need peace of mind. If the mind is unsettled, how we can find happiness? We can. So then the question becomes, how to find peace of mind? How do we need peace of mind? What do we need for it? To get peace of mind. Some good drugs, a nice beach house on a beautiful island, $1 million in the bank account. That'll give us peace of mind. That's what we kid ourselves to think. But what do we need according to Krishna? How do we get peace of mind?
We nourish our soul because we are spirit souls.
To nourish our souls. But again, according to the verse,
You need intelligence.
we need intelligence. Right? To get the steady mind. In order to get peace, you need a steady mind. And the steady mind requires
Intelligence.
transcendental intelligence. All the collective intelligence of this world, you take 8 billion people, how many billion people are on this planet? Close to 8 billion? Okay, let's just say 8 billion people. All of that collective intelligence, it's combined. And is it creating even 1 ounce of real happiness? Nothing. Nothing. Because it's not transcendental intelligence. The mind will not become steadied by any material means. So transcendental intelligence means I need spiritual knowledge. Knowledge about the body and how it works in all of its manufacturing and facilities. That is going to get me birth, death, old age, and disease. That's it. But transcendental intelligence gives me knowledge. I am spirit soul. I have an eternal, loving relationship with Krishna. The higher taste of spiritual life will help me lose the lesser taste of material life. Like that, so much knowledge we can acquire. So this intelligence is required in order to steady the mind. Because the mind has all kinds of ideas and desires. As I always say, if you write down all the thoughts in your mind for one day and you show it to your neighbor, they'll never talk to you again. They'll cut off relations. I'm busy. Mind has so much craziness. Okay? But with our our spiritual Krishna consciousness, one can steady the mind. And with a steady mind, one can then find real peace. And that comes and leads to happiness. Real happiness. So Prabhupada writes, disturbance is due to the want of an ultimate goal. What does this mean? A very nice statement by Srila Prabhupada in the purport. What does this mean?
And if we have a goal, we are a little bit disturbed because either we achieve the goal or we don't achieve the goal.
Okay.
Well, want is a kind of lust, I would say, because it's not engaging. Engaging is totally different. And the want is something I desire.
Okay.
That means a lust.
So the want is a lust, and then I get a goal, either I achieve it or I don't.
Don't, yeah. I mean, if you don't achieve, your mind is disturbed, and if you achieve also, it's disturbed because then you'll have the next goal.
Because you'll have the next goal. Darned if you do, darned if you don't, they say. They say it a little more aggressively. But right? If you achieve that goal, are you satisfied? No. Because you want one more. So disturbance is due to the want of the ultimate goal. Where does that wanting end? In Krishna. Once you achieve Krishna, there is nothing else. He is the source of everything. And thus, one's desire is ultimately satisfied in the Supreme Lord. So our disturbances is due to this desire for this ultimate, but not knowing where to find it. Just like a child wants a piece of candy, but doesn't know which box in the house is located. And how disturbed is that child? It is like us. We're going through this life in want of these things. We can't find it. So this disturbance is in want of this ultimate goal. But the ultimate goal is Krishna. So Krishna speaks in the end of the 5th chapter, this very nice verse, Bhoktadam Yagnatapasam Sarva Loka Maheshwaram Surdam Sarva Bhutanam Shanti Mam Gyatman Mam Shanti Vichiti. He says, Bhoktadam Yagnatapasam. He says, I am the ultimate source and beneficiary of everything. The beneficiary of all sacrifices. It means everything ends in Him. There is nowhere else to wonder, nowhere else to look. He is the Lord of everything. And our ultimate well-wisher. When you know these 3 things, then one finds peace. How? If all of my sacrifices, all of my yajna, I want to know who is the ultimate enjoyer. Krishna will explain in the 13th chapter this topic of Purusha. Who is the enjoyer? We think we are the enjoyer, but we are not the enjoyer. We are the dependent enjoyer. What that means? Krishna is the enjoyer. Why? Because He is the supreme source of everything. He is the Bhoktaram Yagnatapasam, the ultimate beneficiary of everything. And that's the ego-shattering statement. Oh, why him? Why he has to enjoy? But He is our ultimate well-wisher. Which means Krishna doesn't enjoy alone. Krishna never enjoys alone. Who does he enjoy with?
Us.
With his devotees. And what gives Krishna most pleasure?
When his devotees are happy.
Devotees.
When his devotees are happy. He gets more pleasure in being controlled by his devotees, by being told what to do. Wait a minute. This is Bhoktaram Yagna Tapasam Sarva Loka Maheshwaram, the supreme controller, the Lord of everything, all devatas, all planets. He is the ultimate Purusha, real enjoyer. When we as spirit soul acknowledge this, understand this, there's no escaping it. It's the fact. When we understand this, that Krishna is the enjoyer, and our position is of dependent enjoyment. We can enjoy only by his mercy, only by Krishna's mercy. Because we have nothing. What do we have? What did we bring into this world to enjoy? What did we bring?
Nothing.
Nothing. And what will we leave this world with to enjoy in our next destination? Nothing. All we have is to path the real enjoyment, which is our transcendental knowledge. And so Krishna's devotees have understood. So their whole goal in life is to make Krishna happy, knowing he is the enjoyer. But what happens when one exhibits such love to Krishna? How does Krishna respond, reciprocate?
He makes you happy.
He forces happiness upon you. He gives himself completely. You see, who's driving who? Who's the servant? And who's the master? Krishna is driving Arjuna. Every day at the end of the battle, Krishna was washing the horses. Why? Because of his extraordinary love for Arjuna. So as soon as we break this mentality of trying to be the Purusha, the enjoyer, and realize Krishna's Bhoktaram Yagna Tapasam. But rest assured, he is our ultimate well-wisher. Nobody loves us more than Krishna. Dhruva Maharaj's mother, at age 5, Dhruva, becoming very upset by not being able to sit on the lap of his father, of King Uttanapada, asked how I can obtain this power. He told, you must serve Krishna. Where is Krishna? I don't know, somewhere deep in the forest. His mother told his son, 5-year-old son. Now, what mother would tell a 5-year-old son to go deep into the jungle where there are ferocious animals? This is a prince where there, who knows what can be eaten or whether you'll be eaten. But she says, whatever love I have for you is but a tiny fraction of the love Krishna has for you. Now, we cannot even quantify the love of mother for child. We cannot quantify it. But that love is just a fraction of the love of our ultimate well-wisher. So when we know these three things, what happens? We attain peace from all things. This is the peace formula. This is how to increase the real life expectancy. But as long as I think I am the enjoyer, I am the doer, I am lost in my lustful illusions. So Krishna is telling us there is no other way. He has closed the loop. He says, one who is not connected with the Supreme in Krishna consciousness can neither have transcendental intelligence nor a steady mind, without which there's no possibility of peace. And how can there be happiness without peace? That's it. What else do we need to know? We can close up Bhagavad Gita, finish our study here, and just begin chanting and serving Krishna. If we have faith in the words of Krishna. But still we'll wonder, no, maybe there's another way. Maybe there's still one more option. So, Krishna is waiting for all of us to reunite with us. He is missing us desperately. And the question is, when we will come to miss Him? His love for us is undiminished and undeterred, never ending. We have temporarily forgotten. We're simply in a situation of having forgotten our position with Krishna. And now, by the practice of Krishna consciousness, we are in the process of remembering what we have forgotten. And soon again we'll reunite with our Supreme Lord. And everything will be perfect. So, that's what we do in Krishna consciousness. Any comments, questions? Yes.
So, here it is so clear, Prabhu, Krishna is saying that he is the source of everything, but despite that, people, they look elsewhere with the demigods and other gods. So does it mean that they are interested in karma kanda and material desire? That's why they are looking other side of?
Mostly. Sometimes it's out of ignorance, not knowing. But most times it's out of having some desires. I want this, I want that. But most people, it is out of a lot of knowing. Not knowing. Krishna makes it very clear in Bhagavad Gita. There's no ambiguity. And all the other knowers of Shastra also make it very clear. Lord Brahma himself says, Ishvara Parama Krishna Sachidananda Vigraha Nadir Adir Govinda Sarva Karana Karanam. He says, Ishvara Parama, the ultimate controller is Krishna. So, due to want of material desires, one pursues other paths of worship. That is one's free will to choose.
We were talking about the goal, right? In our daily life, the ultimate goal is to reach Krishna. But when we have to go through work and all, in the work we have, like every year the goal keeps on increasing. That always pulls us back to like more of working hard and all. So how do we balance between that goal and this goal? That is the two different directions. Because when we have to achieve as a company perspective, then our goal keeps on increasing and we become unhappy, we get into all those cycles.
So we become unhappy in that situation because we're slightly misapplying the process, if I can speak directly. So this concept of balance, materialized spiritual life, is nonsense. I'm going to speak very bluntly. It's not a question of balance. I always say, I liken it to You want one foot in one boat and another foot in another boat. What happens in such a situation? You end up in the water.
Yeah.
You end up, right? So, we have to decide. So, when I am in my Krishna conscious boat, then, does it mean I don't have a job? No, I have a job. I have a family. I have a home. I have responsibilities. But I have to understand how to perform those in connection with Krishna. So I have to connect all of those activities with my ultimate goal. What is my ultimate goal? Remembering my love of Krishna. My ultimate goal is not even to go back to Krishna. Ultimately, I simply want to awaken my love of Krishna. And wherever Krishna wants me, I'm happy. That is the purest of all desires. Just awaken this love of God. The desire to go back home to Godhead is not to enjoy some beautiful gardens and beaches. It is to enjoy the service to Krishna. So, when I have some faith in that process and I'm embarking on my process of Krishna consciousness, I have to understand how to bring all of my actions under the umbrella of my spiritual life. So, you may have goals in the office, but you have to take that and play it out. What is my goal of achieving that goal in the office? Getting some income, getting some position in the company. What is my goal of getting that position and income in the company?
Serve Krishna more.
Okay. If it is to serve Krishna more, then I do my best to meet those goals of the company. And if they happen, what should be our mood?
Give to Krishna.
Great, Krishna wanted it. And if they don't happen, what should be our mood?
It is also his plan.
Either way, we can renounce, detach. Our job is to do 110% effort. We have to do our best to achieve those goals of the company. Those are not material goals. If my end purpose is a spiritual end, it's not a material goal. Raising your children to learn math is not a material goal. If you're raising your child to ultimately become a nice devotee of the Lord and that he can serve the Lord, then learning math is a means for him to maintain him or herself, and thus learning math is not a material endeavor. So we have to clarify the purpose of all of our activities and not get into the trap of thinking this is my material life, this is my spiritual life. I remember in the early days, when someone is coming to Krishna consciousness, they have a quota. I can give this much to my spiritual life, and this is my quota. It happens. It's natural. It's very natural. But we can start to see that Krishna's this verse is very conclusive to stress. Right? But it doesn't mean then that we, Arjuna wanted to give up his office life. Right? He wanted to give up his work. He didn't like quotas. He didn't like the responsibilities. Whatever stress we have in our office life, we can imagine what Arjuna and Yudhishthira, they had to rule the whole planet. What kind of quotas they had. What kind of demands they had. Right? So, in doing our office life, we rely on the power of Krishna. If Krishna wants to empower us to have the intelligence to make those things happen, he will. And if he doesn't, he must have another plan for us. Our job is one thing. We do our work as sincerely as possible, knowing whatever ability I have has been given by Krishna and I should not waste it. I should not waste my ability. I should not stress and over endeavor, over pursue, so that my sadhana, my chanting and my service and those things become impaired. There's a balance. Right? So those things give disturbance when we have disconnected the two. As soon as we connect it to Krishna, the process becomes clear. The boss hammering for my goals also becomes, in some ways, kind of sweet. As soon as we disconnect it from Krishna, it becomes now tumultuous. Just like, remember, a spark. A spark has its luster when it's connected to the fire. As soon as it separates from the fire, so we have to connect everything too. But not just in speaking, in the heart. Right? It's okay? It's easier said than done. But we have to try it. And keep trying, and it'll happen.
I have a question.
Yeah.
One of my friends, she's not so much into Krishna consciousness, so we have a kind of a discussion sometimes. She says that this is more like you get kind of happy, and will not spur you to have an ambition to work harder to achieve more. Whereas if you are not into this, then one can achieve much more. Here, there is a chance that we will get satisfied with whatever we have. So, how do we kind of...
We show them the life of Srila Prabhupada. How much he worked. How much he achieved. Following the instruction of his spiritual master, he conquered the world. Like no person has, you can say, in the history of mankind. The contribution of what he did will not fully be appreciated for another hundreds of years. Then we'll fully appreciate what his contribution is. How that was done, by laying back and being lazy? No. By endeavoring 22 hours a day from the age of 70 to 82. See, when one comes to Krishna consciousness, they become empowered to do more, but more good. Spiritual life is not about laziness, about inertia. Sometimes people come to Krishna consciousness also as a means to escape responsibility. That is not. So we see through so many practical examples of people who are doing extraordinary things through their spiritual life. You know, we see great doctors who are the top in their field, who are practicing devotees, engineers, IT technologists, business people. So this idea that one becomes, detaches from the world in spiritual life is where? Where is the evidence? And on the other hand, you can very clearly say that the idea of working in material life is the donkey life. It is the life of the ass, the Buddha. That's what the scriptures explain. The donkey carries the heavy load of the washerman for a few blades of grass. Slaving in the factories, working until one is 70, 80 years old. For what end? What has one achieved? Loss of family relations, loss of relations with any sense of reality, so much devastation. So what one has gained? how society will progress and carry on if everyone becomes spiritual. What kind of progression has come? Mortality, life expectancy is declining. There are more suicides and drug overdoses with all the efforts in material society. So what progress is being made in our material endeavors? What progress? Ask this person. Are people happier today than in your grandmother's life generation? Do they have more peace of mind? Do they have more values? Do they have more time? Do they have more comfort? Ask them. If they're really objective, they'll say absolutely not. So then what is the value of all that hard work the last 100 years? What has it gotten us? Nothing. Absolutely nothing. But what will a few years of Krishna consciousness get you? Perfect clarity. Spiritual life will enthuse you to become extraordinarily productive to society. How? By taking this knowledge and sharing it with as many people as possible. To give the greatest of all gifts. And that is eternal happiness and peace. What more one can accomplish through one's endeavors? That's the blunt reality. Any other questions, comments? Yes.
This is on a different topic, Prabhu. 3 modes of material nature. Again on passion, I heard for Brahma, and then for ignorance it is Lord Shiva. So what does it signify? Why they are saying for Brahma, for passion and ignorance?
They are just the overseers of those modes. They are not in passion and ignorance.
Okay.
But they are the overseers as instructed by Krishna. So they are managing those modes of nature. That's it.
So does it mean that whoever is following them will have that?
No. Lord Shiva is a great Vaishnava. Vaishnava yatha shambhu. So if you're following Lord Shiva as a Vaishnava, as a devotee, you will not have, no. If you try to smoke ganja, like some of the followers do, then yeah, you'll be in the mode of ignorance. But if you're following him properly, no. Lord Brahma is head of a Vaishnava Sampradaya. Brahma Madhava Gaudiya Vaishnava Sampradaya. How he can be in the mode of passion? He is our guru. But he is performing an activity. It's okay.
We have seen in Shivites, they eat meat and everything. So
Yeah, that's mode of ignorance.
yeah. Then I was thinking, okay, maybe the followers of Shivites.
No. Lord Shiva is a great devotee. Those who follow him purely,
Yeah. Maybe diluted and whatever.
Rudra Sampradaya. He is the head of one of the Vaishnava Sampradayas. Brahma, Rudra, Lakshmi Devi,
Kumar.
Sanat Kumar. So,
So one thing, want is a good thing or no? I'm connecting back to that phrase.
that's a nice. I noticed that was giving a little bit of
Yeah.
yes. So is want a good thing or not? It's a very nice question. Because the soul is active, we'll always have desires. We cannot become desireless. Certain faiths will say, oh, empty the mind of everything, we have no desires. It's not practical. We have to have desires. So when we say desire less, what we say is we should become free of our material desires and become full of spiritual desires. So want is good, but want of the right thing. Right? When a child wants something that is not good for them, we try to redirect that want to something good. So similarly, we are redirecting our want from happiness of this body, comforts of this body, to wants of my relationship with Krishna. So we must have a strong desire and determination to obtain, to want that love of God, that opportunity to serve. Because with that determination and want, then some enthusiastic activity will happen. Right? So we are not trying to become desireless. We cannot. Because the soul is active, there will always be some desires. So we are trying to bring our bodily platform material desires to spiritual desires. Krishna! How come I don't see you? This person says, chant, chant, chant. And all I say is said in a cartoon, can't. Why? Krishna, help me appreciate and understand the glories of chanting the holy names of the Lord. I hear Hare Nam, Hare Nam, Hare Nam, Eva Kevalam, Kalo, Nashteva, 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 Nitya. But I'm not feeling it. Krishna, I want to chant. Help me. Krishna, I want to serve you in the temple, but I cannot. Krishna, I want to be free of my lust and pride and anger and greed so I can serve you as your humble servant. These are good wants. And that is how we should pray and perform our japa in a prayerful mood, expressing these desires. So the key is to figure out what are the right wants. If you're going to go to Krishna, who is the source of everything, who can give you everything, you might as well ask something of value. What's the value of a few $1 billion? What's it going to do for you? But what's the value of love of God? But I have to have the intelligence to know, to ask for love of God. I have to have the intelligence to think what to ask Krishna. So wants are good, but we have to have the right wants, the right desires.
The other things, what I was thinking before this, want is something with my personal thing. I want this, something for me personal, and I consider engaging is totally different, and that's why I based on my all things, I said engaging means I want to engage in service. So, I mean, is there any like I know if we have a good desire, good wants, that's a good thing. And so, is there any differences between engaging in the service or wanting in the service?
So our want to engage in a service should be for one goal. To please Krishna. Sometimes we want to engage in a service because I like it. Or I want to engage in a service because I'll get some status. I'll get some position, some fame, some whatever. I'll want to engage in a service because someone will give me some rasgulla. No. Our want should be, I want to engage in a service to please Krishna. Right? So we bring in these modes of our own desires sometimes in our service. And it's natural. It happens. But we have to work and we have to have people who can help us see that. Because sometimes we don't see it ourselves. Right? So The want should be what will please Krishna. Krishna, if me not doing this service will please you, then I don't want to do this service. Meaning, Krishna, if this person does that service because they can do it better, let them do it. Let me assist them in doing it. But what's our mentality? Let me do it. But our consciousness should be, who can do it best? Let me assist them in doing it. Because my desire is not for me to do it. My desire is what will please Krishna. What is my role in bringing pleasure to Krishna? A pure devotee says to the Lord, Lord, if you want to keep, if it gives you pleasure for me to be far away from you, let me be far away from you. But instead we move away, move back. That's our natural conditioning. So in our service, we work to purify the consciousness, because when we do, the sweetness of our service comes. That's when the real flavor of seva is tasted. The more pure our intentions, the more purely we'll taste the sweetness of that service.
Yeah, I have a follow-up with that question. I mean, is there something like over-endeavoring to do a service? I mean, I just really want to understand this. How do I know that I'm just trying too hard to do something, or maybe my consciousness is not right?
Yeah, you can over endeavor in the sense that, remember, ultimately, no matter what we want, it only Krishna's plan will happen. We have Krishna's plan and we have our plan. If our plan matches Krishna's plan, it's okay. But when they don't match our plan, there's no value. So, sometimes in over endeavoring, we work as, I want this to happen, I want this to happen.
No, I'm talking about the service.
Yeah, in service. In service. So, we have to be practical in our service, what we can do, what we cannot do, and be mindful that, again, Krishna is allowing us to serve. He doesn't need us. Sometimes we get into this, onto, oh wow, if I didn't do this service, what would happen? Krishna has unlimited servants. When we render service, we should be thinking, Krishna, you are kind. You have so many better servants than me.
Thank you.
Somehow you are letting this foolish person speak on Bhagavad Gita. It is your unlimited mercy. That must be our consciousness. That He's tolerating our service, though there are so many better who can do. So we do the best we can. When the results come, great, Krishna wanted them. When they don't come, great, Krishna didn't want them.
How to not get attached to a service?
Do services that are assigned to you. Work under instruction. That's the best way. Because everything done in the spiritual world is under guidance. But when we begin to work independently, that's what brought us here. So in spiritual life, when we work under guidance and under instruction, that protects us from those tendencies, from that potential. So, it's a balance. And, that's why we have to have close association of those who can guide us. When those tendencies, when those things manifest, you should be open to hearing the correction. See? But sometimes it's painful to hear. We don't want to hear it. Right? It's painful. It stings. Right? So,
It's needed.
but it's needed. But it's needed. is needed for our own protection. It's like when you're driving on the freeway, there's those grooves on the road, right? Nobody likes to hear that noise. But it's needed. Why? Because it brings us back to the road. So like that in devotional life, we need people in our life who will guide us, who will tell us. May not like it, may not want to hear it, but it's good for us because it keeps us out of the ditch. So, following helps us detach from the result and just attach to the service. And trust me, when that happens, the service becomes so sweet. We think, oh, then I don't get to do what I want. It's natural. But when that service mood really develops, then it becomes so sweet. I had an opportunity to do some service in Vrindavan. It was so sweet. Why? Because I had no position to do anything but just whatever someone would give, I could do. I was very grateful, but it was so sweet. So sweet. So, we have to develop that following mood. And then we'll be protected. As soon as we start to work on our own, then we are on our own. We'll just stay under the guidance and everything will be fine.
I have one more question.
Yes.
This is not related to this, but this is regarding, on Tuesday we had a Bhagavad Gita class. So there we were reading in the chapter 8 that one day of Brahma is equal to 1,000 cycles of all the yogas, like Satyug and Treta Yuga, Dwapar and Kali Yuga, 1,000 cycles. So I was under the impression like that this Kali Yuga is done and like we're done, but it's not like that. So 1,000 cycles of all of them, and then that's only one day. And then
That's only 12 hours.
only 12 hours.
So it's technically is 994 sakalpas, but we say 1,000 just for rounding. That equals one 12-hour period, and then there is another equal time of night. Everything is in what we call nidra, dormant stage. There is no activity, and then everything recreates again, and this cycles begin again. So within a day of Brahma, these 1,000 what we call kalpas, Krishna appears only in one of them. Only in one of them.
Only one cycle he appears, so he just appeared in a. You're so lucky.
Now you know your fortune. Now you know your fortune of human birth. Not only that, more importantly, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu only appears after Krishna appears. He doesn't appear in every Kali Yuga. Now we know our extraordinary fortune. And now we should take our Krishna conscious seriously, if we have any intelligence. Because we are extraordinarily fortunate to have appeared in this most glorious Kali Yuga, in the golden era, just 500 years after Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Krishna himself appeared, where his mercy still is very strong and potent. So yes, it only happens once in a day of Brahma. So it's during the reign of Vaivasvata Manu, the 7th Manu.
What cycle are we in? Like, in the like out of the 1,000 cycles, like where are we? Which
We are in the 7th Manu.
7th cycle.
7th Manu, and the 28th cycle.
28th cycle.
28th cycle. So everything is all defined in Shastra. The point of that verse in 8th chapter is to explain that Brahma almost seems eternal, but he is not. he still has, and he dies. He has birth and death and old age and disease also. Okay?
Is that with all the demigods, they all
Yeah.
take the birth and live their life and then
Yes. They're all posts, positions. Like Lord Indra is a post and is occupied by a particular jiva. And then after that, someone else will occupy that post. As Lord Brahma. Lord Brahma is a post. So different jivas will occupy the post of Lord Brahma. So that's how it, that's also given in Shastra. Who is the Lord Indra of this kalpa? That's also given. Okay. So now we can chant. The most important thing we can do in our spiritual life is chanting the holy names of the Lord. Without chanting, nothing else can happen. We must take to the sincere process of chanting. All this knowledge that we are acquiring in the Bhagavad Gita is for one goal, and that is to bring us to the point of chanting the holy names of the Lord very seriously. We should chant with great enthusiasm, great care, and great attention, not whimsically. As it happens, No. Chant with great care, because it is the most potent means and the only means for us to make progress in our spiritual life. So when Krishna says, there is no other way, that should inspire us to chant. When Krishna says there is a higher taste, that should inspire us to chant. When Krishna says he is the ultimate beneficiary of all sacrifices, that should inspire us to chant. Everything is meant, we do service for the goal of increasing our taste for chanting. Sometimes we let our service get in the way of our chanting. Oh, I'm doing this service, I cannot chant. That is not the proper application of Krishna consciousness. We first must protect our sadhana very, very carefully. Okay, so let us chant in a prayerful mood, wanting from Krishna the mercy to taste the glories of the holy name, to have the strength to overcome all the obstacles in chanting. We can pray to him in this way, and of course he'll reciprocate as our dear friend. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya, Prabhu Nitya.